Hey folks, this is Tron Games and welcome to Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're going to do a getting started guide with kind of Isabella von Carstein. Isabella von Carstein's kind of initial starting position is exactly the same as Vlad's. So this starting guide kind of covers both of these lords, both Vlad and Isabella. So off the bat, the Sylvania faction is kind of looking for this blood kiss piece. They start with one of these, both Isabella and Vlad both do, and the blood kisses are used to access more powerful lords. And you need at least three of them when you awaken the first one. The second one costs 6 rather than 3, and the last one costs 9. So it's good to take a look at what you might want here in terms of where you want to go. This is often quite a good one to go for early on. It gives you increased research rate, it gives you additional winds of magic, and then eventually cheaper upkeep for all your armies. So that can be a really strong one. If you look at some of these other ones, you have additional crypt ghouls, ambush success chance. This improves your vampiric corruption, and then this adds crypt horrors to the pool as well. You can get increased character gain. So this is another common one people go for early, just to level up their characters more quickly. Increases diplomatic relations with the Empire, Kislev, Cathay, and Bretonia, so they, don't declare war on you as quickly. And then, just improving your line of sight. You don't have to like awaken more than one lord in an area. You can awaken the first one here, and you can awaken the first one here for 3 each if you want. This is also a good one to start with. 10% casualty replenishment rate, gives you additional control, gives you the Sylvanian crossbowmen, and then the handgunners. The thing with this group here is that the vampires don't really have ranged units, and so getting access to just the Sylvanian crossbowmen and eventually the handgunners can give you a little bit of a way to fight back against some of the factions that are a little quicker, but generally speaking, you don't necessarily need the range units to do well. And then here, this is improving your cavalry units, increasing the unit experience that each of your armies units earns every turn, and then this improves your blood knights, which is a cavalry unit. So there's kind of two really important mechanics to be aware of with the vampire faction. They have this ability called Raise Dead. So when you are in a province, you can basically raise units immediately, and these are recruited on the turn that you do that. So I'm just going to do that to start with. I've now added a few extra units to this army. Isabella and Vlad are kind of a pair that you don't want to separate. So you can see it gives them improved prowess in battle. When we add them together, we want to keep them in the same army. This is really, really quite a good thing. It's also just good because they level up together, which is a good thing early on. With the vampires, if you look closer at blood kisses, you can get more blood kisses by defeating other faction leaders, by making vassals. But one of the major ways to get blood kisses is by assassinating either other generals or other heroes. It's really quite a good thing to upgrade the wound mechanic on your vampire so that you get basically increased chance for those assassinations to work. That can be a really good thing, especially late in the campaign, and you can kind of, farm blood kisses almost to unlock all of these additional lords. The one other thing that you do get with this faction here is, I'll just pull it up here, is you get access to this Mausoleum of the Mad Count. This is a really good building to build early on because it allows you to recruit additional vampires. Vampires are quite strong for this faction, but there is another really good building I almost always build first here, which is the gold mine. You'll notice right away that you don't get a huge amount of income as the vampires. Honestly, you can be a little bit starved for money at the beginning of a vampire campaign, so I often will upgrade that. I upgrade the main building, and really actually for the first 30, 40, 50 turns of a vampire campaign, when you do one with the von Carsteins, I'm constantly fighting, and this city is one of the only ones I'm trying to continually upgrade, because you just don't have the amount of money that you want to start upgrading everything. So I tend to focus on funneling money back in here, and there's another reason for this too. And it's just if you look at the cost of some of the later buildings, like this cost 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. They're quite expensive buildings, you know, later on in the tree, but especially when you look at here, this last one to upgrade to a level 5 settlement costs 16,000. So it's quite expensive to upgrade your settlements as a vampire. So that's why I often focus on just building up Castle Drakenhof early on. Now, the starting position overall is quite good. You're pretty sheltered here, even though, like, the dwarves are pretty close here. I've had actually quite a few campaigns with the vampires where these guys actually befriend me for some reason. You know, I don't worry about the dwarves here too much. This dwarven faction, though, is quite dangerous. Cadron has access to Slayer units and Giant Slayers. These units can absolutely wreck your melee units, because the melee units that you do have access to are not particularly strong to start with. And Cadron has access to Slayers, and the Slayers do work on, you know, your infantry units. They're really difficult to get rid of. One other major thing I like to do at the beginning of these von Carstein campaigns is, because you want to focus on fighting a lot of battles with your main army, and you also need to spread your vampiric corruption. So vampires have this vampiric corruption mechanic. You need to spread this to areas around. So you want to fight a lot of battles, but not necessarily take settlements. I like to actually kind of trap, usually Eschen. I kind of lock it into my area, and I just focus on continually beating up on it, because I'm able to gain a whole bunch of additional levels from just repeatedly beating up this settlement. So we're gonna get a decisive victory there, and here, rather than looting and occupying, we're just going to sack it. And then one thing to be aware of here with the raised dead mechanic, so in this region, it's the same as being in this region. Okay, so if you're in the same province, it's the same there. I'm going to then recruit a few additional spearmen, because eventually I'm going to have to take that group out over there. And then here you have a few options. Pretty much all of these are viable in some sense. I tend to go with this, because improving the experience gain and reducing the amount of money is a really good thing, especially early on. The hunger is also extremely good, which allows your groups to heal a little bit. And then I'm going to upgrade the replenishment as well. So that's kind of the beginning of, you're going to want to take these areas. There's also a bunch of different options here. Now, lots of people will go this route first. This is a really good one to take first, but then after that, I don't tend to worry about this area too much. I tend to come over here and start to upgrade, particularly the skeleton warriors and skeleton spearmen, because they tend to be the core of your armies for at least the early to mid game. Later on, well, you used to actually just stack skeleton spearmen because they were super good and they were free, but now that's not the case. So you want to actually build a little bit more balanced armies with the vampires, and yeah, you're going to want to upgrade kind of those melee troops early on. One other thing to remember here too is with your victory conditions. There are relatively few victory conditions with the vampires to start with. Northern Sylvania and Southern Sylvania are literally right here. But Altdorf is actually quite a bit over here. And the faction that starts at Altdorf is actually Reichland. Reichland gets quite strong quite quick. So they are the Empire, not just Reichland, but the rest of the Empire. All of these factions. Stirland, Averland is over here as well. Those tend to be your major threats to start with, along with Karak Kadrin, and actually Kislev is up this way too, who can also be really, really irritating. So just be aware that you are kind of packed in here on your own. There isn't really other vampires close by. The closest other vampire is kind of over in this area. And so he usually doesn't do particularly well in the campaigns that I've played. So just something to keep in mind. As you go further, you actually have only Reichland that you want to get rid of. And so initially, I don't focus on expanding. I just tend to beat up the areas in this neighborhood. And as I've taken Tempelhof, Oberstyre, Waldenhof, I tend to just focus on getting this way because there's another guy over here, Balthasar Gelt, who gets pretty strong, and cutting him off and getting rid of him quickly before he confederates with Reichland is really quite a good strategy. So I tend to just focus on, you know, looting looting the settlements over here. I might even occupy them, but I don't ever invest any resources in them, and I don't care if somebody else takes them or anything. I'm just focusing on spreading corruption through this area. So that's kind of a good first turn overview. In terms of the beginning army, as the turn goes over here, the Vargulf is really valuable early on, especially if you fight some battles manually, because the Vargulf can like kind of push through units and get behind them and then attack them in the back, which is really valuable for kind of breaking enemy forces. The one other thing that Isabella actually gets that Vlad doesn't get is Isabella gets increased capacity for vampires. So she can get, I think it's 3 additional vampires right at the beginning. And they also recruit slightly higher. They have better weapon strength, better melee attack, better defense for the vampires when they're in her army. So she's quite a really quite a good lord to use. Here, I don't want to take this. I just want to sack it, and then, funnily enough, you can actually get to Waldenhorf here. And again, I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to... It's a Pyrrhic victory here, but that's okay. We'll take the Pyrrhic victory, and we're actually going to loot and occupy this settlement. And we're still doing reasonably well here. We've got to be a little bit careful of these guys. But I like to do that and then just immediately raise the dead on the units that died. And then here you can actually recruit a few extra units too. We want to keep beating up on Eschen. We're on turn 2. We've already got Isabella at level 5. This is really quite good for us. This is a good start to this campaign. Here again we're going to keep improving these folks. Again, I like to focus on, now getting access to the magic for vampires. You can see these guys get quite a bit of replenishment too, so it can be pretty pretty good to just focus on fighting battles at the beginning. You want to take these 2 regions next, and then you want to just kind of keep them in your pocket here. So like if something, if you want to raise another lord, or you like don't want to start a war with anyone else yet, you can just keep beating this settlement up. It's really, really good in the early game to do that. The only other thing that I want to make sure that people realize here too is that this direction is a direction you don't really want to go. Even though Karak Kadrin often will come down and start stuff with you, if I often will take Karak Kadrin from the dwarves, but then if I beat them, there's another settlement over this direction and some other ones down this way. I often will just raise those because I want to kill the dwarves. I don't want them to be able to fight with me anymore, but I don't necessarily want to invest resources or get like bogged down in the mountains up here. There's just so many more and better targets for us to get into down this direction. So this is the way you want to focus on going. And that's kind of all I've got for this one. If you like the content, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more in the future. Thanks for watching.